Okay. Boker told my friends today's Daf Yomi is Chagigah Daf Hey, and we're going to start on Daf Daled Amabez around 6 lines from the bottom. We're talking about different verses that when different rabbis would come to these verses, they would break down in tears and cry. So Rav Yosef Kimate Lahaikra Bachi. When Rav Yosef came to this verse, he would cry. And the Gemara cites the pasuk from. So Gemara cites the pasuk from Mishlei, which states, "V'yesh nispeh below mishpat." Or is there anybody who dies without judgment? So from Proverbs 13, verse 23. So that there are some people who die without judgment. So Rav Yosef cries, "Amar mi ika de azah below zimnei." He says, is it really possible that somebody could die and it's not the right time for them to die? Is that really possible that that's the case? Gemara says, yes, unfortunately, it is possible. In Kihadra Bibi Barabaye, Gemara tells us that Rav Bibi, the son of Abaye, he had a relationship with the angel of death. He used to have conversations. So, and he was there one time, and the angel of death said to his assistant, Zil Aisili Miriam Magdala Sayar Nishaya. He says, go bring to me Miriam, the one who braids hair of women. Now, Tosfos points out that this is the same woman who is the mother of Jesus. The mother of Jesus was not Mary Magdalene, but still, Tosfos suggests that this was a reference to that person. But it's censored. The cross-reference that Tosfos cites is not there. It's not there in the Talmud and Shabbos in our printed versions. 104b, so probably it was removed by the censors, or the Jews self-censored it out of concern that it could lead to problems. So he said, go bring me Miriam, the one who braids the hair of women, but Megdala Sayar. So what happened? The angel of death's assistant messed up. And what did he do? Isolate Miriam Magdala Dardaki. He didn't bring Miriam, the one who braids hair, but he brought Miriam, the one who brings up or raises children. So it sounds similar, but he brought the wrong woman. Amrulay Anna Miriam Magdala Sayer Nashia Amrulay. He said, I told you to bring me Mary, the one who braids hair. You brought me Mary, the one who raises children. Amrulay Yachia Hadra. He said, should I send her back? Amrulay Hova I see say. He says, well, since you already brought her, let her stay as part of the quota I need to have every term. So I need to have a certain number of people, and we'll count her as the ones I've killed. So Rav Bibi says, how could you take her? She didn't do anything wrong. How could you take her young? So the Gemara says, I have a Nikita. Miss Arabia, she was holding like a fire stick in her hand, Vavakas Shagra, and Umachre Tanura, and she was using it to like stoke the oven. And what happened was, Shakalta Vanachta Agaba de Kara, on top of 5 days, she put it on her foot and Kadchan, she burnt her foot. And because she was doing this activity, which was dangerous, what happened was, Isra Mazoa, her mazel got messed up. I see. I was able to bring her. So Amrulay Rav Bibi Barabaye Ischu Reshuso Mevid Hachi. How are you able to do this? Where do you get the permission to take a person and bring them to death when it's not their time yet? He says, so the angel of death responds back to Rabbi. The angel of death is a lamdin. He knows Torah. He says, yeah, there's a pasuk. He says, Vaksiv. It states, V'lo ksiv isn't a ram v'yeshes be'below mishpat. There are some people who are basically brought to death without it being justice. Some people die prematurely. There's nothing I can do. It's completely acceptable. So the angel of death. So Rav Bibi responded, "Amrei v'aksiv dor olech v'dor ba." So he says, yeah, but everybody has their time. Each generation has a certain number of years. You can't end the generation short. Amar Darinahu Ana Adamalahu Adara. He says, yeah, I carry her around. She comes around in my travels until this generation is finished. And only then do I hand her over to Duma. Duma is the one who the angel of death gives over the bodies to. So only when she's coming around with me. In the meantime, when her generation's finished, I give her over to Duma. Amarle, so Shanamai about it. Okay, but she had a certain number of years left, 20, 30, 40. Those years, you have to have a balance. What happens to those years? Amar Ikat Surmame Marabanan Demaver Bemila Mosif Nulahu way. He said, yeah, if there's a rabbi, if there's a young Torah student who is very forgiving, I basically give him the extra years, and then he learns Torah, and then when it comes up to the Bezin Shemala, the heavenly court, we say to him, look, you got these extra years, and you used it for Torah study, but it's really this person's extra years, so then he'll give it to the person who I took early. We see from here that the Talmud, I think, is teaching. There's a lot to talk about in the story, which we won't talk about because we have too much to talk about in this stuff. But the basic upshot of this story to me is that if you see somebody taken prematurely in life, then our responsibility is to use our life we are given extra time by the angel of death. So our responsibility is to use that extra time to do powerful things, positive things like studying Torah, doing good deeds. And then when we come up to heaven, we can share that with the person who was taken prematurely. That's the teaching. Rabbi Yochanan lost 10 children. So he used to cry a lot when he came to these psukim. So Rabbi Yochanan, when he came to this verse, he cried. What does it say about Tisiteni, about Job? That Job, it says that the Satan incited God to attack Job. Tisiteni bo v'alochinam. God says, you incited me to attack Job for nothing. Rabbi Yochanan says, if there's a master who is servant can incite him to do something bad, and he listens to him, do we have any chance in the world? Rabbi Yochanan, when Rabbi Yochanan came to this verse, he cried. It says, it says that God will not trust in his holy ones. He doesn't even believe his holy ones, from the book of Job. Now, it says Rabbi Yochanan, if God doesn't trust his holy ones, but man yamin, who's he going to trust? So he was very upset, depressed, cynical about it. But then one day, Yom Achada, Rabbi Yochanan is walking along the road. He saw a man, he was picking figs. He took those figs that were unripe, and he left behind the figs that were ripe. He did the opposite of what we normally would do. So Rabbi Yochanan said to him, but the ripe figs are better. Why are you leaving the ripe figs behind? He says, he said, I need these for the journey. Hani natron, hani lo natron. So I take the unripe ones. They're the green bananas. They're going to last longer. So says Rabbi Yochanan, this is what it says in the verse. God says, it says in his holy ones he will not trust. When God takes somebody young, it's because he says he wants to take him before he does any sins. So he takes him while he's still pure. Gemara says, Heini, is it really the case? There was a student in the neighborhood of Rabbi Alexandria, he died young. And the rabbis there said, if he really would have wanted to be one of the rabbis, he could have lived. He was not studying Torah. So that's why he died. He wasn't living his life properly. So we see that you're taken young because you don't live your life properly. Gemara says, no, that case was different. That was a guy who was very disrespectful to his teachers. But if a person is living a good life and they're taken young, we say it's because Hashem wants to take them while they're still pure. Rabbi Yochanan, when Rabbi Yochanan came to another verse, he broke down in tears. It says, I will take you to judgment. I will be a very quick witness on those who are doing witchcraft, adultery, swear falsely, and take the wages of the workers. So Rabbi Yochanan cried, a servant whose master quickly judges him and quickly testifies against him. What hope does he have? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, woe to us. The verse equates all the minor sins with the major sin, meaning to say we have the minor sin of not, of having a dispute with your workers over payment, and a major one of adultery and murder and idolatry, and God equates them. Woe to us. So says the Gemara, whoever perverts the justice of a convert is as though they pervert the justice of of heaven. Shenemar, it says, Umate ger mishpat, umate ger, one who perverts those who twists in the plural, the twisting of the plural So mate ksiv, it's written in the plural. Amar Chanina bar Papa call Osadavar Maschare, whoever does something and regrets it, Mochan lo miad, we immediately forgive him. As it states, V'lo Yeruni, it says it in the verse in Malachi, they do not fear me. Ha Yeruni, but if they would fear me, it says Umate ger V'lo Yeruni. They pervert the justice of the convert and they don't V'lo Yeruni, and they don't fear me. This implies that if they do fear me, we immediately forgive them. Rabbi Yochanan when Rabbi Yochanan came to another verse, he cried. It says, it says in Koheles that all the works of God will be brought to, if you don't keep the works of God, will be brought to justice, or even the hidden things, im tov imra, whether good or bad. So what does this mean? It means to say, let's say you kill a louse in front of your friend and he's repulsed by it. You don't even know, you might not even know you did something wrong. You caused your friend to be repulsed. But causing him to be repulsed is enough of a sin that God is going to cause you to be judged one day. And Shmuel Amar first is somebody who does something, uncouth, vulgar. He spits in front of his friend. The friend is like disgusted, but his friend doesn't say anything. But that too is we're gonna be punished for. So the point is that we have to worry about about being rude, about not insulting, not doing something that'll cause our friends to feel uncomfortable. What does it mean by that verse? It says whether it's good or bad. Ma'im tov imra. No sin tzedakah anim b'farasius. So somebody who gives charity to a poor person in public, somebody who gives charity to a poor person in public will be judged severely. Well, what's wrong with that? When Rabbi Yanai saw that there was a man, the Kayav Zuzi, he said he was giving money to a poor person in public. He said you'd be better off not to give him than to give him like this and embarrass him. It refers to somebody who gives woman charity in private, because the you're going to cause her to be suspected of certain things. Rava Amar Zeh Meshagar Ishto Basar Sheina Machutach Parve Shabbos. So refers to a man who sends his wife meat on the eve of Shabbos, but the meat is not properly cut. You have to remove the sciatic, the gid anashe. But if he doesn't remove it, she might be rushed and not able to do it. So you're doing a sin by causing her to prepare non-kosher food. Mar says, what about Rava? Rava Meshagar. Rava used to send his wife the meat right on Erev Shabbos, and it wasn't. They didn't remove the Gid HaNashe yet. Shani Bas Rav Chisda. Rabbi was married to Rav Chisda, his daughter, and Rav Chisda's daughter was different. He knew that she was an expert in these matters, so it's not a problem. Rabbi Yochanan came to a verse. He cried. It says, when you'll find him, Raos, bad things, many bad things, vitzaros, and many afflictions. So what does this mean? Means Evet, he started to cry. Evet Sharabo Mamtsilo Raos Vitzaros Takana. If you have a slave or a servant whose master gives him Raos Rabos, the many bad things, does he have any chance? What does it mean, Raos Vitzaros? Amarav, this means Raos Shenasos Tzaros. This refers to Raos. This refers to bad things, Shenasos Tzaros, that they become afflictions to each other. Rashi explains, and we'll read the Talmud, could go and see Burava Akrava. If you have like a wasp bite at the same time that you get a scorpion's bite. So Rashi says the treatment for one is cold and the treatment for the other one is hot. So what are you going to do? You can't treat it because and the other one, if you treat it the wrong way, it makes it worse. So what are you going to do? You have two afflictions in the same time, and you have two medical conditions, and the treatment for one aggravates the other one. So that's what Rav Yochanan cried. Shmuel says this refers to somebody who gives money to a poor person, but only at the time where they're in great distress. But the problem is because they should have given it to them earlier. This goes back to the idea that you're doing something good as well. Rashi understands that you're doing something good for somebody, but it's really bad, that you're going to get punished. Give the poor person only when he's like in a crisis. That's not helping him. You have to it's not helping him sufficiently. You have to help him before he gets to the crisis, or help him to really get out of just the immediate thing. And Rashi gives the example. The Gemara gives it also, but we'll see what it says. We'll read the Gemara first. Rashi says that you can't find any money to buy wheat. Meaning, say you buy wheat, you get it at a good price, you make it into bread, you live like a mensch. That you can't find, but with tlita, but to just lose the money, that you'll find it. Meaning to say when the price is expensive to buy like the fancy bread, that you could get, but that's not the way to really help the person. And then it states, so as we continue with that verse we just cited, this is in Deuteronomy. God says, I'll be angry on that day and I'll abandon them and I'll hide my face from them. Whoever is not included in this category where God hides his face from them, Eino mehem, is not going to be part of them. Meaning to say, who's not part of the punishment, somebody who's not being basically hidden from God or punished by God, Eino mehem, or the top of 5b, is not going to be considered part of the Jewish people. The Jewish people are considered to be part of. We as our fate, we are people who are punished. He says, so the Rabbanan saw Rava. We said in the Gemara Moed that Rava he lived to 92. He had many simchas in his house, 60 weddings. So the rabbi said to Rava, you're obviously not part of Hester Panim. God's not hiding his face from you. So and you're not part of the one where Hashem is punishing. So you don't even know how much I'm being taxed in private, what the king is doing to me in private. You just see what's going on in public. You don't know how much I'm in Saras. I feel nevertheless, since the rabbis put their eyes on him, they gave him like the ayin hara. In the meantime, so that caused that King Shabur sent his tax collectors and they looted Rava's property. Amar, so the Gemara says, Hainu Detanya, this is what it means when it says in the Brisa, Amar Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Kol makom shenasnu chachamim eineim omiso oni. Wherever the sages put their eyes, you either get death or poverty. Meaning to say, if somebody puts their eyes on you, it's going to cause problems. What do we do with this verse? Vanochi aster astir panai bayomahu. Amar Rava, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. God says, even though I hid my face from them in a dream, I'll still speak to him. Rav Yosef says, what does it mean that even though God's hiding his face from us, still he hides his face, turns his face, but he sticks out his hands towards us. As it says, with the shadow of my hand, I covered you. So basically, even though God covers over his face, nevertheless, even though he's covering over his face, he's still, even though God hides his face, he still covers over his hand. Rabbi Shua ben Chananya was standing in the Caesar's house. So there was a Apikoros, a heretic there, who was made a gesture, a hand gesture. He says, Amada Adrinu Marila Ape. He says, you're the nation that God has hid his face from you. So then his hand, so Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya made a gesture back to him, and it said to him, he said, his hand is still outstretched on us. Rabbi Yeshua. So the Caesar said to Rabbi Yeshua, said, what did he show you? He said, he said, he showed us, he said, he made a gesture that we're the nation that God has turned his face away from us. And I showed him back. No, God, even though God had turned his face away from us, his hand is still stretched out on us. So then the Caesar turned to the heretic. He said, said, what did he show you? what did you do to him? I said, so he said, Amad Hadrinu Marmine. So the heretic said, I made a gesture to him that we're the nation, that they're the nation who God turned his face away from. They're no longer the chosen people, so to speak. And what did he show back to you? Well, you're done. The guy says, I don't know. The heretic said, I don't know what Rabbi Shimon Hananya showed back to me. So they said, he said, such a man who doesn't understand hand gestures, he's going to start making hand gestures in front of the king. They took him out and they killed him. So that's that story. Obviously, these stories have to be understood on a deep level. And stories like this are probably part of the polemics between the Jewish people and the other nations at the time, the other sects. Gemara says, Ki kanicha nafshe de Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, when Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya was getting ready to die, he said, who's going to argue with us for the heretics now? So Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya responded, Avda Eitza Mibanim. It says in the verse states in Jeremiah, it states, Avda Eitza Mibanim Nishacha Chachmasam. Once the counsel has been lost from your children, then their wisdom of their other nations will also be lost. Meaning to say, once your children lose their counsel, don't worry about it, because the nations of the world will also be diminished. They also won't be able to argue effectively. So we're going to go together. Alternatively, we can learn out from here. Because Esau says to Jacob, I'm going to go and travel, meaning I want to travel with you. So that means that they're going to be on our level. So don't worry that they're going to dominate us in this field. Rabbi Ila was walking up the steps in the house of Rabbi Bar Shila. Shamil Yanuka, he heard a child, Davakakari, and the child was reading, the child is reading the verse from Amos. Behold, he creates the mountains, he creates the spirit, and he also tells man what is going on in his conversations. So when he heard this, Rabbi Ilah heard this, Amar Evet Sherabu Magid Lo Masicho. So he says, an Eved whose servant tells him, whose master tells him, I know your private conversations. Takani Yeshua has got no chance. And he says, God knows all our private conversations, our private thoughts. We have no chance. What does it mean? My masicho amarav afilu sicha. The different versions of the exact text. It's so afilu sicha yisera, either extra talk or sicha kala or light talk. Shebein ishli ishto. Basically, even God even knows, and we're going to be, so to speak, punished for even the pillow talk between a husband and wife. So magidim lo adam b'shasmi. So that's going to be recorded and played back for man during their moments of death. The Gemara says, Amy, is that really the case? That we're going to be punished for that? Rav Kahana, Havegane Tute Purya de Rav. Rav Kahana was sleeping what he did was he went under the bed of Rav. He wanted to know what his Rebbe Rav, how he acted with his wife. So he wanted to learn from him. So he went under Vishama the Sach Tzachak Ba'asat. He heard that Rav was being very playful with his wife. So Amar Dami Pume de Rav Commando Time Latif Shila. He says, wow, your mouth sounds like you've never literally tasted a cooked food in your lifetime. Meaning to say, this is not what I expected. And so Rav says, Kahana, Pook, get out of here. Lava Rachara. You're not acting properly. In the rest of the other version, the other parallel source of this is in Brachos 62a, and there it says, Rav Kahana responds, I need to be here. Torah, I need to learn Torah from you. Who else am I going to learn it from? But anyway, we see from here that Rav spoke amorously. He spoke with passion with his wife. So the Gemara says, well, Kasha, it depends whether or not it's necessary for your relationship. If it was necessary, then you're allowed to do it. If it's not necessary, then you shouldn't do it. So now the Gemara cites another verse, and tivke nafshi, that it says in the verse in Jeremiah, if you don't listen to God's words, then in the secret places my soul will cry. So what does that mean? Mibnei Geva, on account of the Geva, the arrogance. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yinei Mishmei Derav Makom Yesh Lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gaza is a place Mistatrim Shimon. We called it Mistarim Shimon. We call it the secret places. And Mibnei Geva. My Mibnei Geva. What does it mean on account of the arrogance? Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. On account of the arrogance of the Jewish people that was taken from them, given to the idolaters. Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani says, Shmuel Bar Nachmani says, on account of the Gavasa, there was the exaltedness of the kingdom in heaven, which has now been diminished. So anyway, we see from here that God Himself is crying. Is God Himself crying? Can God cry? Rav Papa says God never cries, as it says, God is rejoicing and is happy, glorious, and delight. So strength. So in His place. It depends in the outer chamber and the inner chamber. In the outer chamber, God is not crying, but in the inner chamber, God cries. So the Gemara says, well, God does not cry in the outer chamber. Hashem Svakos Bayomahu Evechil Mispad Ulkarcho Chagor Sak. It says in the verse in Isaiah, Hashem Kim Svakos Bayomahu Evechi, and that day Hashem will cry and he will eulogize, and it will be a day of sackcloth. So God is crying. So the Gemara says, Shani Churban Beis Hamikdash. That day refers to the destruction of the temple. That's different. Malachi Shalom. Even the ministering angels cry, as it says, Hein Aralam Tzaku Chutza Malachi Shalom Mariv Kiyut. So even the ministering angels cry the day of the destruction of the temple. Now, since we're talking about the destruction of the temple, it says Vidamo. It says in the verse from which we cited earlier anyway, we cited in Jeremiah 13, it says, Vidamo Tidma Vaterid Aini Dima Kinishpa Eder Hashem. And 3 times it says the word God is crying, He's crying because the flock of God has been lost or captured. Why do we need these 3 cries? So Achas HaMikdash Rishon, one is for the first temple, Achas HaMikdash Sheni, one is for the second temple, Achas HaYisrael, and one is for the Jewish people, Shagalu, that they've been exiled. One is for the Jewish people who are be exiled from their place. Some say Achas HaBitul Torah. And some say the third one is for the fact that Torah was not studied. It makes sense according to the approach. It says it's for the Jewish people that were exiled. That fits within the context of the verse that the flock of God was captured. The one who says for not studying Torah, well, what does that have to do with what does that have to do with the flock of God being captured? So Gemara says, since Jewish people have been exiled from their place, there's no greater loss of Torah than being exiled from your place. Okay, it's obviously a very powerful daf with a lot of many beautiful teachings. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy, of course, to address them.